All right, Finance Minister Tito Mboweni presents his medium-term budget tomorrow in the face of huge economic challenges. Government is struggling to turn around the economy, and Mboweni is expected to release a revised economic growth strategy and a plan to address Eskom's debt.
Slow economic growth and the cost of the public wage bill. These are just some of the concerns raised by the DA as the Finance Minister crunches the numbers in preparation for his mini-budget on Wednesday. The DA wants the wage bill to be slashed by 168 billion rand and savings directed to education and safety for South Africans.
Essential services on which the poor and the public at large rely in South Africa are being crowded out by interest expenditure. As debt goes up, we spend more and more on the interest bill every year. Already we spend more on interest than we do on police and fighting crime. Soon we will spend more on interest than we do on educating our children.
Some want to see concrete measures to stabilize Eskom.
We would like to see stabilization at particularly Eskom, that has now just received an extra 59 billion rand that has to be found from somewhere. And of course, we would like to see economic growth being stimulated. This will in turn increase tax revenues and of course help to balance the books.
We've given up on Tito. I mean, that policy released, even without discussing it with the ANC, his party and the alliance, tells you which direction these people are taking. They want to privatize everything. They want to please white capital because they are saving through the mandate of white capital. It is white capital that gave them money, and they have to make sure that they repay that money.
With the competing interest to the ever-shrinking budget, the Finance Minister will have to do a delicate balancing act between allocation and expenditure when he tables his mini-budget on Wednesday. Lula Mamatya, SABC News, Parliament.
All right, breaking story there. News coming out from Stats SA is that South Africa's the country's unemployment rate has gone up. We will have details for you on later shows here on the SABC News platform. But quite a way to look forward to tomorrow when from Parliament the Finance Minister Tito Mboweni will tell the nation how he will allocate the nation's resources in the foreseeable future. In the medium-term budget policy statement, different sectors of the South African population have differing interests in this address, but the biggest concerns are runaway spending in a sluggish economy that is not meeting its revenue collection targets. Dr Samuel Koma is with the Mill Park Business School, and he joins us now to try and look ahead. Thank you so much for coming through, and that breaking story coming through.
The
economy, the unemployment rate being at its highest in 11 years.
Yeah, but this is not surprising because already between 2018 Feb to December 2018, South African economy had an additional unemployment number of close to 1 million. So it appears that the reforms that were promised to be instituted by the sixth administration may not be bearing fruits in reviving the economy and also creating the much needed employment opportunities for the working class, the unemployed, unskilled, and majority of graduates who are just coming out of the university system.
One of government's biggest headaches is the public wage bill, which is said to be sitting at about 45%. How do you balance this conversation about a wage bill that needs to be reduced, and the finance minister saying this is a political conversation and not a fiscal conversation? Balance that with a growing unemployment rate.
Yeah, these are very serious issues that needs to be tackled by the government. And you're right, the issue of the public sector wage bill has been flagged by the current Minister of Finance, Tito Mboweni. And interestingly, in his speech this year, he said we'll have to take tough choices if we want to have a choice of either going to heaven or elsewhere.
But he's
And there's
butting
no
heads
magic wand on
with
this.
Labour
Yeah.
in terms of how to go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. In fact, he's likely also tomorrow to continue to raise the issue of the austerity measures on how to curtail the public sector wage bill, have a cap on salary increases, have a cap on pay progression, and also limit overtime, and also to some extent the issue of performance bonuses. So these are the tough choices that they have to take into account in terms of addressing the public sector wage bill. You remember, Desiree, the bigger chunk of the government budget is going into public sector wage bill at the expense of capital budget and also other
with no money coming in.
priorities. Exactly. So they will have to find a way to drastically deal with. But it will take some time because, as you rightly mentioned, Labour, public sector unions are really not happy with some of these austerity measures. Yeah.
How much time do we have, though? The ratings agency, can they tolerate just the problems in South Africa any longer?
No, exactly. The international rating agencies may take comfort in some of the budget reforms and also economic reforms that the minister will be pronouncing. Remember, they are aware that we coming out of a technical recession in 2018. We have put some measures in place to revive the economy. That will take some time, but they want to hear these measures, these decisive measures you are putting in place to assure them, especially the investment community, both domestic and also international. They want to see what steps are being taken into account to stabilize and reconfigure your state-owned entities, your ESCOM, SAA, your DINEL, to some extent the SABC, PRASA, Transnet, and all of that. To what extent are you also addressing the issue of the public sector wage bill, and also the issue of tax collection? Because remember,
absolutely,
it is now
which is 50% less than what has been projected.
Yeah, so they would like to hear the minister say, no, guys, remember, we have now revived the illicit economy unit, which was crippled in the past. We have also revived the defined business unit that is going to assist the South African Revenue Service to be able to assist in terms of collecting the much needed revenue. Because
so those are some positives.
Exactly, they will want to hear that.
The Energy Minister, Gwede Mantashe, is in Parliament today. Expectations are that he will talk about the expected 59 billion bailout of Eskom. And of course, the Finance Minister will take this into consideration when he speaks to the nation tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. But the good thing is that Minister Tito Mboweni, in his previous budget speech, already said, do we still need some of the state-owned enterprises? If yes, in what manner? What measures are we supposed to take into account to stabilize these SOEs? Because we cannot afford constantly to give them financial support or state guarantees. They have to become commercially viable and also address and also fulfill their strategic objectives.
But a conversation about reconfiguring state-owned entities speaks mostly to the reconfiguration of Eskom into those three separate entities. Yeah. Is that a political conversation, or is that an affordability conversation?
Yeah. Yes, my understanding is that it also extends to DINEL, the SABC, SAA, my reading of the situation. But of course, the focus largely is on Eskom because of its huge debt. But politically, the Eskom issue also it's a tough one, because already the Tito Mboweni economic paper does propose privatization of, for example, Eskom. The president recently said, no, we cannot afford to have a wholesale privatization of Eskom, especially in terms of those defunct dysfunctional power stations.
So very low economic growth, lower than expected revenue. We need to find money for Eskom, SAA, SABC, grant allocations. Will this expected bailout of Eskom happen?
It will. They have to really assist Eskom to deal with its debt, but also introduce other measures. The last discussion we had in this studio, we referred to some conditions that they've also proposed, and also how best to restructure Eskom to become more efficient and also effective. So Eskom is a headache, but it's not the only headache. And my argument, Desiree, has always been that in South Africa we don't seem to have a money problem, but it's about the manner in which,
even though it said that we're borrowing money to pay interest.
No, because the president recently already said, we lost close to 500 billion from state capture. The Auditor General recently, in his report, already flagged the issue of an increase on irregular expenditure, amounting to about 50 billion.
So there is money to spend?
There is money to be spent.
Oh, wow,
but,
that's interesting.
The issue is how do they go about spending this money, but also prioritizing the issues that are supposed to be having an impact on the ordinary citizens. Issues around provision of quality health, quality education, your human settlements, and other important social
So what you're saying is, in this challenge, which they say is government's challenge of restoring fiscal discipline and reining in public debt, you say it's about the decisions that government departments are taking.
Yes, because, I mean, if you follow most of the National Treasury reports, they always flag the issue of the non-spending by some provinces and municipalities on an already allocated budget. So you're allocated 3 billion to roll out infrastructure, but towards the end of the financial year, you'll spend 20%. You have to then ask for the amount to be, or the funds to be rolled over to the next financial year. So can you see, it's the issue of capacity to spend this allocated budget on the part of the functionaries.
Okay, so we have time constraints. What will Tito Mboweni do to restore fiscal discipline in South Africa?
Yeah, he's on the right path. I like his consistent messaging in terms of saying we are in a dire economic situation. We'll have to take tough decisions. We hope his colleagues within cabinet and those who are part of the alliance, partners of the ANC, will begin to appreciate this sluggish economy and the difficulties that we are faced with, but also the plight.
In disagreement.
Yes.
They're not in agreement.
Yeah, exactly. But also, what about the plight of the unemployed? And you remember, the more the economy doesn't grow, the more unemployment people are going to be increased in terms of the number.
And let that sink in. That's where we're going to end it. Thank you so much for coming through to talk to us this morning. Dr. Sam Koma is the research head at the Mill Park Business School. Just to look ahead to the medium-term budget policy statement tomorrow. Blaine?